Now notice the eyes are different, nose are different, but they do have 5 fingers, 5 toes, 2 eyes.
Area 51 has been tied to conspiracy theories, government secrets, and years of speculation. It was built and operated under strict secrecy.
What's going on up there could be the most important event in history. You're talking about physical contact and proof from another system, another planet, another intelligence. That's got to be the biggest event in history, period.
This hidden military base in Nevada has raised a lot of questions about alien life and unknown technology. The CIA later released documents confirming that Area 51 is a real top-secret research facility. But new information has started to come out. Bob Lazar, the man who made Area 51 known to the public, recently showed some declassified photos on Joe Rogan's podcast.
So you get inside this thing, and it's designed for something that's much smaller than a human being.
Yeah, you can't really stand up till you get to the very center of it.
And what do you think this was designed for?
I'd say something close to half my height.
Wow. So these little 3-foot tallish creatures.
These images, which were once kept from the public, might change how people look at Area 51. Could they show alien technology? Or is there a more ordinary reason behind them? Let's break it down. Area 51 sits in the middle of the Nevada desert. For many years, it was just considered a military base. But because of how secretive it was, people believed there had to be more to the story. The government denied its existence for decades, which only made people more suspicious. The rumors started during the Cold War. Back then, the US and the Soviet Union were both working on advanced technology in secret. One of the first projects at Area 51 was the U-2 spy plane in the 1950s. This plane could fly at high altitudes and had a design that looked unusual for the time. Some thought it was not from Earth. At the same time, people near the base, including some who worked in the military, started reporting UFO sightings. These reports led people to believe the base had a connection to alien life. Over time, Area 51 became strongly associated with UFOs and possible government cover-ups. Even though the base was only officially confirmed in 2013, people had already made up their minds long before then. Some thought the government was hiding alien spacecraft. Others believed they were trying to reverse engineer alien technology. People wondered why the government worked so hard to keep Area 51 hidden. Why not just say it was for testing planes? Many felt that the extreme secrecy pointed to something more serious. And the more the government stayed quiet, the more people believed something strange was going on. The UFO theories didn't stay in classified files. They made their way into movies, TV shows, and everyday conversations. The first major public reaction came in the 1950s, when people living near the base saw strange lights in the sky. Some military workers also said they saw flying objects that moved in ways regular aircraft couldn't. The government kept saying these were just test flights of new aircraft. But the sightings didn't stop, and people kept asking questions. Over time, the idea grew that Area 51 wasn't only for developing new weapons, it might also involve alien technology. Some even believed the government had already recovered alien spacecraft and was studying them in secret. The way Area 51 was guarded and cut off from the public only made these beliefs stronger. Reports of reversed-engineered alien tech and strange craft being kept at the base became more common. People believed this was where the government hid proof of alien contact. The shift from rumors to national conversation came when people inside the system started speaking out. This included supposed insiders, whistleblowers, and even some officials. Suddenly, these topics weren't just part of conspiracy websites. They were being quietly talked about in public spaces, and even in political circles. Bob Lazar is one of the most well-known names linked to Area 51. In 1989, he said that he had worked at a base near Area 51 called S4. According to him, this site was made for the specific purpose of studying alien spacecraft. He said he was hired to help reverse engineer technology that wasn't human-made. Lazar claimed the government had more than one alien craft and was trying to figure out how they worked. He described disc-shaped vehicles that could bend gravity and fly in ways that modern aircraft could not. The most unusual part of his story was that these vehicles used a rare material he called element 115, which supposedly powered their propulsion system. Lazar gave specific details about what he saw and what he worked on. His story didn't sound like something randomly made up. It had technical points that made people take notice. Whether people believed him or not, Lazar helped shift public attention back toward the idea that Area 51 might be hiding something much bigger than secret planes. According to Lazar, element 115 was the reason the spacecraft could defy gravity. It allowed them to hover and travel at extremely high speeds. When Lazar first made these claims, element 115 hadn't been discovered yet, and most scientists dismissed his statements as fiction. What made Lazar's story stand out were the technical descriptions he gave. He explained the propulsion systems of the alien crafts in detail, something the average person wouldn't know. According to him, these crafts didn't have typical wiring, visible engines, or rivets. They looked completely different from anything built by humans. He even mentioned hand scanners used at S4 for employee identification. At the time, this sounded ridiculous, but later it was revealed that military contractors actually used such devices. Lazar's credibility was questioned almost right away. He said he studied at both MIT and Caltech, but no official records supported that. His supposed employment at Los Alamos National Laboratory was also impossible to confirm. Because of this, many people dismissed him as a fraud who had made the whole thing up. Still, some believed that the missing records were part of a government effort to erase his background and silence him. Regardless of where you stand on Lazar's claims, it's clear that his story played a big role in boosting public interest in UFOs and Area 51. His decision to come forward and reveal what he believed was happening behind closed doors made him a respected figure among many UFO believers. His claims didn't just add to existing conspiracy theories, they gave those theories a name, a voice, and a scientific explanation that hadn't been introduced before. Lazar's claims had already stirred up attention, but it wasn't until he appeared on Joe Rogan's podcast in 2019 that his story gained wider public exposure. His appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience wasn't the usual talk you'd expect from someone involved in UFO topics. He didn't seem desperate to convince anyone. Instead, Lazar came across as someone tired of constantly being doubted, laughed at, and put under pressure. His delivery was calm and thoughtful, sometimes even tired. He wasn't trying to win anyone over. He was just telling his version of events, after years of keeping quiet. One of the most talked-about parts of the interview came when Lazar described the gravity-based propulsion system he had worked with. According to him, it went against known physics. He explained how the craft could bend gravity, essentially warping space-time, which gave it the ability to move in ways no traditional aircraft ever could. This wasn't just about flying fast. It was about traveling through space in an entirely different way. What made this conversation even more interesting was Joe Rogan's reaction. Known for asking tough questions and pressing his guests, Rogan seemed genuinely curious about what Lazar had to say. Though he often questions conspiracy theories, he didn't reject Lazar's story outright. Instead, he encouraged him to explain the science behind the propulsion system in more detail. The more Lazar explained, the more engaged Rogan became. This didn't feel like a wild story being pushed by someone chasing attention. It felt more like a technical talk about something unusual. But it wasn't just Lazar's explanations that made the interview stand out. It was the timing. By then, the Pentagon had already admitted that UFOs, now officially called UAPs, or unidentified aerial phenomena, were real and under investigation. Videos and documents had been released showing strange objects flying in ways no known aircraft could. That's what made the timing of Lazar's podcast appearance so important. For the first time, the government wasn't denying UFOs. They were confirming their existence. Rogan brought this up during the interview, even suggesting that Lazar's claims might have been true all along, despite years of being labeled a fraud. Lazar also mentioned newly released photos that he believed supported his story. While he didn't show the photos himself, he made it clear that he considered them important. He suggested that the photos might serve as key evidence to back up everything he had already said. Lazar remained guarded about what more he could share, explaining that he had already said as much as he was willing to. Still, his vague comments only deepened the mystery. His focus was never about chasing attention or money. He was simply waiting for the truth to eventually surface. The release of previously classified documents and images tied to Area 51 has played a major role in shaping how the public views the facility and what goes on there. Over time, many Freedom of Information Act (FOIA) requests led to the release of government records that offer a clearer understanding of the base's activities. Even though these files don't provide direct evidence of alien technology, they do give a more detailed view of Area 51's background and how it contributed to military developments. Among the most notable releases were aerial photos taken during high-altitude reconnaissance missions. These images exposed the full scale of the facility, including runways, hangars, and various other structures that were previously kept hidden. While these photos confirmed the existence of the base and gave a look into its layout, they didn't show any solid proof of alien-related activity. Instead, they pointed to the base's involvement in testing advanced aircraft during the Cold War. Alongside the images, the declassified documents shared information on how top-secret military planes were developed and tested at Area 51. In particular, documents related to the U-2 spy plane and the A-12 reconnaissance aircraft showed how these planes were built and flown under intense secrecy. These aircraft were essential to U.S. intelligence gathering during the Cold War and were often mistaken for UFOs because of how unusual they looked and flew. The release of these records helped explain many of the UFO sightings reported near the base. They suggested that people were likely seeing test flights of advanced but human-made aircraft. Still, what drew attention in the declassified images was the appearance of unknown flying objects that didn't resemble any officially recognized aircraft. Some of these objects lacked standard features like wings, exhaust systems, or visible engines, details usually found even on the most advanced jets. This detail lines up closely with what Lazar claimed about the propulsion systems used in the aircraft he said he worked on, which relied on gravity-based technology. Skeptics maintain that these strange objects could still be military prototypes, and that the lack of solid evidence in the images keeps them from confirming Lazar's story. Even so, the continued release of photos and files keeps raising questions about what exactly is hidden at Area 51. Despite how interesting Lazar's claims are and how curious the documents may seem, many skeptics point out that nothing so far confirms the existence of alien technology. The photos and papers shared by the government haven't proven Lazar's most extreme statements, and many believe the unusual aircraft in the images can be traced back to experimental military programs. Unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs, refer to anything in the sky that can't be immediately explained. Skeptics often say that many of the UFO sightings near Area 51 are more likely due to secret military planes such as the U-2 or A-12, both tested over the base during the Cold War. These aircraft were revolutionary in terms of their abilities, often flying faster and higher than anything seen before. Since they were kept highly classified, sightings by civilians often led to confusion. During the Cold War, the U.S. and the Soviet Union were locked in a technological competition, and secrecy was critical. The U-2 was one of the first planes able to fly at very high altitudes, making it hard for everyday observers to recognize it. Later, the A-12, which paved the way for the SR-71 Blackbird, was also designed for high-speed, high-altitude surveillance missions. Both aircraft were capable of flying in ways that could easily be mistaken for otherworldly if someone didn't know what they were looking at. UFO reports from the 1950s and 1960s near Area 51 could likely be linked to these classified flights rather than actual alien visitors. Skeptics also believe that some of the odd shapes and features seen in declassified images, like missing wings or no visible engines, don't automatically mean something is alien. These traits could simply be part of early-stage prototypes of military aircraft that weren't yet fully developed. Engineers often test experimental designs that don't look like traditional planes. To someone outside of those programs, the designs could appear alien even if they're entirely man-made. One of the biggest issues with Bob Lazar's story is whether he can be believed. Even though his claims were attention-grabbing, there are several problems in his background that lead some people to view him as dishonest. Lazar said he had worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory and studied at both MIT and Caltech. However, when reporters looked into his background, they couldn't find any official records of him attending those schools or working at that lab. For many who doubt him, this missing information makes it hard to trust anything else he says. If Lazar really had been involved in reverse engineering alien craft, why would there be such a strong effort to erase all trace of his education and work history? Even Lazar has pointed out that most of his story depends on the technology he claims to have seen, not on any direct contact with alien life. That opens up a lot of room for doubt, since he didn't claim to touch or see extraterrestrial beings or spacecraft up close. His descriptions, while highly detailed and interesting, don't include the kind of hard proof that scientists would need in order to take his claims seriously. The strange objects and censored documents shown in declassified images are definitely unusual, but people who doubt Lazar see them as just more examples of how the government handles sensitive military projects. The belief that Area 51 hides alien technology still attracts plenty of attention, but many see it as nothing more than a mysterious idea surrounded by secrecy, theories, and confusion. The mystery surrounding Element 115. Element 115 is considered a super-heavy element, and according to Lazar, it's not like anything we're familiar with. When exposed to radiation, it supposedly creates its own gravitational field. One of the most attention-grabbing parts of Lazar's story is his claim about this element, which he said was central to the propulsion systems used in alien spacecraft. When Lazar first went public with this in the late 1980s, Element 115 hadn't even been discovered yet. Scientists at the time dismissed what he said as pure science fiction. But in an unexpected turn, Russian scientists managed to create muscovium, an isotope of element 115, in 2003. Lazar had described this element as being able to store a massive amount of energy and create strong gravitational effects if used correctly. He claimed that these gravity fields allowed alien craft to control gravity itself and warp space-time, which would explain how they could hover and move at speeds we can't imagine. At first, people thought this was just part of his elaborate theory, but once muscovium was officially added to the periodic table with its 115 protons, some began to take another look at what he had said. Even so, there's a major issue. Moscovium is highly unstable. It breaks down in just milliseconds, making it hard to imagine it being used as a real energy source, let alone as the power behind anti-gravity engines. This raises a serious question. If Lazar's story is true, how could such an unstable material be used to power advanced spacecraft? Lazar said that the version of element 115 used in the alien technology was a stable form, something science has yet to create. It's possible that this stable isotope could exist naturally somewhere in the universe, but no one has found it yet. So, while Moscovium's discovery doesn't directly prove Lazar's claims, it did make them harder to ignore. Lazar, who calls himself a physicist and says he has a strong background in science, has stayed consistent in how he describes this element and what it was used for. He claimed the U.S. government had spent years trying to understand and duplicate this technology. If they could figure out how to stabilize element 115, they believed they could develop a propulsion system that uses gravity itself, something unlike anything we have today. Lazar even mentioned that scientists at a site called S4 were already trying to create a usable version of this material to power the craft he described. Still, not everyone is convinced. Scientists point out that no one has yet made a stable version of element 115, and without that, Lazar's claims remain unsupported. However, the idea that element 115 might be more than just science fiction hasn't been completely ruled out. If Lazar is telling the truth, and a stable version of this element does exist, it could lead to huge changes in how we think about travel, maybe even travel to other star systems. These are ideas that currently seem beyond our reach. Bob Lazar isn't the only person who has spoken out about hidden alien technology and government secrecy. In recent years, several former officials and whistleblowers have stepped forward with their own stories, adding new layers to the claims Lazar first made. One of the most important disclosures came from David Grush, a former intelligence officer who was involved with the Pentagon's UAP task force. In 2023, Grush testified that the U.S. government was in possession of alien spacecraft and non-human biological material. His statements stood out because they closely matched Bob Lazar's earlier claims about reverse engineering extraterrestrial technology. Grush gained credibility due to his access to highly classified materials. He said this information confirmed the existence of alien craft and that these programs were kept hidden, even from many top government officials. His account supported what Lazar had said years ago, adding more weight to the idea that U.S. military and intelligence organizations were secretly studying UFOs. Dr. Stephen Greer has also played a major role in pushing the conversation forward. In 2023, he led a press conference where several former military members spoke, with some backing Lazar's claims that alien technology was being examined and reverse-engineered in secure, off-limits locations. These testimonies, including those from Grush and Greer, have helped to strengthen the case for what Lazar originally described. While doubts still exist, the growing number of high-ranking individuals sharing similar stories makes it harder to ignore the possibility that there's truth behind Lazar's account. With so many whistleblowers stepping forward, the mystery around Area 51 and the UFO phenomenon continues to grow. Bob Lazar's influence on culture. Lazar's story is more than just a tale about aliens or secret projects. It has left a lasting impression on how the public views Area 51 and UFOs in general. He didn't just feed into existing rumors. He pushed the whole topic into the spotlight. Before Lazar went public in 1989, most people had never even heard of Area 51. It was just a classified military base in Nevada. But once his claims were aired, the name became widely associated with conspiracy theories, extraterrestrials, and hidden technologies. Lazar helped give the UFO movement a recognizable identity. His account added detail and direction to what had mostly been vague speculation. The idea that the government was covering up the truth became a serious point of interest, and Area 51 quickly turned into a pop culture symbol for secrecy and cover-ups. His story didn't stay confined to fringe communities. It spread through mainstream media, showing up in films, documentaries, and books that drew heavily from his narrative. The documentary Bob Lazar, Area 51, and Flying Saucers, directed by Jeremy Corbell, helped preserve his story and made sure it continued to reach new audiences. Lazar's appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience in 2019 brought even more attention. It introduced his story to younger viewers and made more people take his claims seriously. For many, this interview served as a reintroduction and helped shift how he was perceived, from conspiracy theorist to someone worth listening to. Lazar's calm tone and technical details gave his account a sense of scientific grounding that made it difficult to brush off completely. He didn't just stir curiosity about UFOs, he changed how people talk about government secrecy and the chances of life beyond Earth. Over time, he's become a central figure in the larger debate around unidentified aerial phenomena. With more declassified files and new voices adding to the discussion, the big question still remains: what is really going on at Area 51? Lazar's testimony may only be one part of the overall story, but as more pieces come to light, the full picture is still far from clear. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching.